Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Let's start the Board of Education meeting of August 19th at 6 o'clock. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lucy. I have a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move.
The second?
Second.
By Victor. Any comments? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The next item is public comment. Ken, do you have anybody that's ready for public comment? We'll have a 3-minute limit on the public comment tonight, and Missy will be the recorder.
Okay, we currently have 3 callers. Callers, if you wish to speak, please dial *9 to raise your hand. All right, we've got 1 person raising their hand. Last 4 digits of the phone number end in 8021. Please state your name and town for your comment.
Yes, this is Candace Burrett. I'm from Durham. My comment is about item number 8, the vote on the fall sports. The CIAC and the Public Health Department are having a meeting tomorrow, and I just think that it might be better if you hold off on the vote until you hear what they have to say. Because if you guys vote to cancel fall sports and they're saying it's okay to go ahead, do you know if you could possibly be costing a child in our district a scholarship for sports? It doesn't affect me personally because my kids are only 6, but it could be affecting other parents and other kids in this district. So until we have all the information, it might be better if you hold off on having that vote. The discussion is fine. I think the vote probably should be held off. And that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No one else is indicating they wish to speak at this time.
All right, the next item is the approval of the minutes of the August 12th regular session meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
All right, any comments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next board meeting is August 26th at 6 p.m. We will also have a policy meeting at 5 p.m. that night to finalize our discussion of masks. Next item is the hybrid reopening plan. Kath, you want to take it away? We can't hear you. Kathy, I think you're on mute still.
Yeah, sorry about that. Just a couple of updates tonight. One is addendum, a little bit of an overview on addendum 6 that has to do with educating children with disabilities, which is a very comprehensive document, and you can look it over in its entirety, but just a couple of high points for the board. Also, some updates on some of the changes in the executive order on masks and masks exemptions. Folks from the policy committee can update others, which just about everybody was a part of that. In terms of some of the protocol guidance that we've gotten from Shipman. And then we did get, there is addendum 7, which gives us some guidance on a visual and performing arts that I'll just kind of go through the document with you. And then just a little bit of an update in terms of where we are as an administrative team as we prepare to open school in 15 days. Okay, let me share the screen. Okay. So let me get rid of you so you can see this. Just in terms of the addendum 6, as our director of special education and student services, Jen Keene, has, shared with her staff and with the administrators, this will be, some of the most significant work that any of us will do in our career. And what's important to understand is there's been no communication whatsoever about any kind of temporary flexibility or waiver in terms of the guidelines that govern special education. And so any services that have been documented in a child's IEP or individualized education plan through in-person instruction, remote instruction, or a combination of both, students need to receive all of those services as documented, and really with a strong emphasis on providing as much in-person education as possible, and that in-person education for students who receive special education should be prioritized. And, I think that those parents and teachers who either received or were responsible for the delivery of individualized education plans know that there was some creativity between March and June in terms of the delivery of services. But in every situation, the LRE or the least restrictive environment must be considered for that. FAPE is free and appropriate education, and just the plan. And again, I've really tried to distill it down to some of the key points. Really, our priority in District 13 is working in collaboration with our parents through just conversation or when needed, the PPT process, to make sure that we're meeting the needs of children and that we're not putting them in jeopardy unnecessarily of falling behind. What we need to do with parents is kind of share with them something that's called the implementation plan. And the implementation plan will outline any differences in the delivery of services that will be necessitated due to a change in the general education delivery process. The implementation plan is if we don't need to make any changes in the way we've delivered the IEP, then it won't be necessary to create the implementation plan. And any IEP hours that have been identified in an IEP, an individualized education plan, that we would have delivered in person full time, should be the same in the hybrid model. And as you know, that is why for many of our students, and we're kind of using a strict criteria by which we'll determine which students who receive special education services would be coming to school for 4 days in the hybrid model. And again, there are some provisions that you can see here for some slight adjustments. And as always, parents do retain their right to dispute any resolutions or options that have been made available if they believe that a free and appropriate education is not being provided to their child. And so far, I think that we've maintained a very productive and respectful working relationship with the parents of students who receive special education services, as we see that's a critical variable in our success in working with our students. And then our PPTs should continue, obviously, throughout the year as a way to develop IEPs, and that in District 13, we're kind of moving forward not only with PPTs, but other meetings, even our own in-school meetings, with a priority on holding those meetings remotely whenever possible, really as a mechanism of diminishing any face-to-face contact that isn't really necessary, at least as we begin the school year. I also wanted to give you a little bit of a mask update. This was the information that I shared with you that was in a brief from Shipman and Goodwin, and that there are some changes, and the changes in the mask rules are really in kind of two key areas, and one which was the exemption for an older child if a parent isn't able to safely place the mask on the child. But the second, which I think in the beginning we are all kind of scratching our heads of like, really, you can have an exemption, but you don't have to have documentation. And in fact, there does need to be documentation. And Shipman and Goodwin have put together for us not only a protocol, but a form for us to use or for parents to use with their healthcare provider that needs to be checked with our COVID-19 liaison, Pam Branson, for prior to having that exemption approved. And just a little bit more information, just that the executive order is really kind of more closely aligned with the language that is in our ADA guidelines, the Americans with Disability Act. And just as we have been doing with any of our staff members who feel that they need some sort of an accommodation, in order to come back to teach or work in person, that those people need to have we can ask for a documentation of disability and also documentation from their health care provider in terms of what types of accommodations would be necessary for someone to do their job in person. Reopening considerations for music programs. Music obviously is very important in our district, and this is addendum 7, and we have shared this with all of our principals, as well as Erin Schilling, who is the head of our music department right now. I'll just note, and I know that many of you already read this, but the research from the University of Colorado that really examined the aerosol rates produced by wind instruments, vocalists, and actors, and kind of how quickly they accumulate in a space and what are the risks in different classrooms and other venues such as music rooms and auditoriums. So we have some guidelines for like general music, chorus, and instrumental music. And those, I think, kind of generally fall in certain areas in terms of, people wearing masks, the social distancing, depending on the type of performance and the type of instruments that are being used, something which was kind of a new term to me, but probably not to many of you, that's called bell coverings that, kind of cover the base of the instrument, again, to kind of minimize the spread of any types of droplets. And two other kind of general areas in terms of proper ventilation and how the amount of time between courses to allow for fresh air to come in. And I just want to use this as a kind of a mini commercial break for us, that as I'm on calls with superintendents from around the state, and I listen to some of the significant challenges that other districts are having in terms of bringing students back to school in any capacity, in large part due to the challenges they're having with ventilation. I have to say, first of all, I'm so relieved and so grateful for our facility staff that has consistently kept up with our ventilation systems, and that is probably one of our lesser challenges as we go into reopening. Back to music. Also, the final area that we're looking at has to do with kind of just encouraging some other types of instructional approaches, including, you know, using percussionist instruments in general music classes as an example, and using some more digital approaches to music, at least at this time. And you know, again, music, if you're just in a general classroom setting. Also some ideas that they have here for how to schedule that so that a music teacher may not be exposed to hundreds of students in any given week. Our choral and ensembles are, you know, also have some guidance here. Instrumental ensembles, and just so you know that our middle school and high school, under Erin's direction and in collaboration with the other music teachers, are really looking at how to schedule, minimize the number of kids, and follow the guidelines that they have here, which I'll be modifying our reopening plan to include this so that we can continue to offer our students the opportunity to participate in music. And as you know, we are, I'm not certain at this point where we are in terms of finding a instrumental music replacement staff member at the high school. We're currently in process of that, but haven't finalized anything at this time. So actually, I think this is well written, and you might find it interesting to take a look at that. And then the last thing, you know, we have the Dr. Serino to-do list for our team. Most recently today, we were finalizing some decisions based on lunch. We had, our original plan was for students at the elementary school to eat lunch in their classroom, and it's something that, in conjunction with the teachers union, we're looking at whether or not we can get the students out of the classroom, especially in the nicer weather, or use a few spaces so that kids aren't using their classroom to have lunch. Related to that, we have made contact with someone who can provide us with some tents. And as I have mentioned before, the Durham Fair Association has donated the use of their picnic tables to each of our schools. So we've basically taken as many as we can accommodate, just to allow staff and students a place to be outside, be socially distanced, and be able to work, eat, or have a snack. So today's, these were kind of our big topics for today as we met, finalizing our classroom setups to account for the 3 to 6 feet of social distancing to the degree, to the extent feasible, with, you know, obviously looking carefully at the 6 feet as our goal, and really with an eye on moving to a full reopening and how we will accommodate that safely in our current classrooms. Each school also has identified safety ambassadors. Today, we just verified who those people will be, so that these are just members of our staff that other staff members can go to if they feel like they want to share a concern. They're seeing something in the school where they're feeling like some of their colleagues are not really following the safety guidelines that we've put together. And we talked about tents, band, chorus, pre-K and K orientation. Both Tom and Deb have created a kindergarten orientation for students that will happen next Tuesday at Lyman and Wednesday at Brewster. And our conversation on athletics clearly has continued. I know that's an item on our agenda that we're going to be talking about We have 5 days of professional development, staff slash teacher meetings slash time for teachers to work together. And so we finalized that schedule today, which will be shared with our staff. Convocation will be, a virtual convocation, which is a little bit sad for me since it's my last convocation, and I do love that day. And I actually have reached out to Christopher Eves, who was present at our last convocation, and he and I are going to be working together to do a virtual convocation. I kind of had this idea of Natalie Cole and Nat King Cole singing Unforgettable. I'm not sure we have the time or technology to do something like that, but I'm sure we'll give them, the staff, a great message. We also are finalizing what are those required trainings that teachers must participate in, which include things like DCF reporting, bloodborne pathogens, sexual harassment, and then we have a number of other kind of COVID related trainings, mask wearing, hand washing, and other areas that we have kind of a system that our teachers can actually go online for these trainings. So we're just kind of giving them an expanse of time to accomplish that. And then, of course, we have new staff orientation, a little bit different this year than we've done in the past, and that will be on October 24th. We're finalizing our communications to parents so that they really understand our instructional models that will go out next week. Obviously we have shared some information. We want to be a little bit more specific next week in terms of what those schedules will look like. And we are finalizing our staffing, those staff members that need an ADA accommodation that can be accomplished through remote teaching or support. Our student, finalizing our students, those who will be homeschooling, opting into remote learning, and those who are coming back to school. That is kind of finalized at midnight tonight, but I reached out to Kim just before this meeting to see if she could pull those numbers together for me. So while you're talking about athletics, I may have a look at that. Obviously, we've had some hiring to do. We have had some resignations, and we are just looking for, potential backup. If there's been any cohort adjustment we need to do, we've also worked on that. And I'm a big fan of the checklist manifesto that was written by a surgeon, that we're more likely to not skip a step if we have checklists that we're following. So we're working on those checklists. I also, I guess a huge shout out to our district nurses who I met with last Friday. And I have to say, we have an unbelievable group of nurses who are calm and smart and skillful and ready to help lead through this. And then just kind of, if we were to have any type of a situation arise in the school, whether it was per student for dismissal, or whether we had a cohort, or if we were in the situation where we needed to dismiss a whole school. So those were the things that we checked off our list today. And that is the update from last week to this week.
Hey, Kathy, can I ask a question about the music? Has our local health official weighed in on this particular item?
He has not, because we just got it, and we met on Tuesday, and quite a bit of our conversation on Tuesday, our Tuesday meeting, really focused on athletics.
Okay, thank you. Also, I just want to say that it is readily apparent the amount of work that you and the administrators and the teachers have done on this, the constant changes and everything. I know you're all at your wits' end. I know you think you're coming to the finish line in 15 days, but it's just the starting line. So please express my thank you to everyone publicly for all of the work that they're doing and how hard it is and what they're going through. So thank you.
Sure. And just kind of the dynamic of this as a, you know, a leader and in terms of my looking at what happens with organizational change, we have been in a situation of kind of learning, anticipating, problem identification, planning, recursive planning, circling back around planning, getting more information. The fact that we're going to be moving from planning to action is actually kind of energizing. And the difference though with this kind of planning for action is there's also the huge consideration of, are we going to do everything right? And so, but I will say, you know, we're ready. We have been at this for 158 days. And so 158 days, 15 days to open, you know, do the math. The amount of time that has elapsed from the time we left school until the time we'll re-enter is almost ironically an entire school year. So yes, but we're looking forward to having people back in our buildings, because when you have children learning in buildings, that's when they become a school. They're just buildings right now. So thanks, Bob. And thanks everybody for your questions and encouragements and like, wait, what are you doing? We appreciate it.
Kath, I know that we've been working with the teachers and other unions on their agreements. Want to just give a where we are with that for the board?
Bob, I'm not sure if it's my computer. I really am having a hard time hearing you. Anybody else? Can you hear Bob?
No, I agree.
Okay.
All right, I'll ask again. Maybe turn the volume up more. You hear me now?
A little bit better. Yep.
I was just going to ask where we are, you know, if you give a little update on the agreements with the unions on their how we're working out for next year.
Okay. And as you know, when you're in the process of negotiations, you can't publicly share any of the details. But I think that we're getting very close to finalizing our agreement with the teachers. And I anticipate that should be completed by Friday. And it's actually incumbent upon the union to reach out to the board or administration. And at this point, we've just begun very informal conversations with the support staff.
Thank you. And will the board have to approve those MOAs?
You know, I think that it would be a good idea this year to do that. I know last year, you know, sometimes the MOAs are simply signed by either the board chair or the superintendent, but I think that this year's a little different than last year when we were just kind of immediately leaving the school. So I think it would be important for the board to review it. I'm not certain you have to vote on that, Bob, though. I mean, I guess you could vote on anything, but let me check to see whether that should happen or you know, if you want to vote on it, how we would go about that.
Okay. And as I read the music stuff, there's very little involved in performances for the future. Most of it's going to be related to music instruction, appears to be. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any other comments for Kath?
Did you send us that music thing or did you just get it?
We just got it. And you know what I'm going to do when we're done with the meeting? I'm just going to, the State Department just sent us all the addendums and links to them in one document. So I'm going to cut and paste that and share them with you. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Christmas in August.
Any other comments? Thank you very much, Kath.
You're welcome.
And hopefully next week we'll be ready to say we're all set. But I think we're really close.
Yeah, and I think next week, again, I will really finalize exactly what our mask approach is going to be, what it will look like in student handbooks, what the kind of the conduct or discipline will look like relative to non-compliance, and then just kind of the guidelines that will go into our reopening document. And the other thing we anticipate getting by the end of the week is the criteria by which we make decisions about an entire cohort leaving the building or the actual closing down of a building for, you know, a designated period of time.
Great. Next item on the agenda is discussion of fall athletics. And we started this discussion last week. There have been a tremendous amount of discussion of it in the press, the CIAC, the State Department of Health, Public Health, and a variety of other actions that are going on. Some schools canceling already, like New Haven and Bridgeport, and others who are discussing it. I know that Bob and I talked today about, you know, how about if Bob could lead a discussion. Are you still there, Bob?
Yes, I am. Can you all hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. With respect to the discussion that we had on the board, and in light of the fact that DPH is meeting with the CAIC tomorrow evening, I would like to give this board an opportunity to weigh in on that discussion. And in so doing, I'd like to make a motion that RSD13 Board of Education adopt the resolution that supports the current recommendations of the State Department of Public Health be followed, and further recommend that the superintendent of schools delay the start of interscholastic sports for a period following the start of in-person school per the recommendations. So let me read the resolution I'd like us to vote on. The resolution of the RSD13 Board of Education in the matter of the conduct of high school interscholastic sports for the fall of 2020 in consideration of the impact of COVID-19 and on the safety of students, athletes, and all students, the Board of Education in consideration of the following. Whereas the State Department of Public Health in their letter of August 13, 2020 to the Executive Director of the CAS-CIAC recommended the delayed start of interscholastic sports until 2 weeks following in-person school opening. And whereas the State Department of Public Health recommended limiting the number of games and the use of locker rooms. And whereas the State Department of Public Health recommended schools consider the conducting of low risk and moderate risk as defined by the National Federation of State High School Associations, the NFHS, and Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, SMAC, with proper education and mitigation strategies in place, which include boys and girls cross country and girls swimming and boys and girls soccer. And whereas the State Department of Public Health recommended that the indoor moderate risk of girls volleyball be postponed or canceled. And whereas the State Department of Public Health recommended that the higher risk of football be canceled or postponed. And whereas the football committee of the CAIC voted 9-1 to postpone football until the spring. And therefore, the Regional School District Board of Education supports the current recommendations of the State Department of Public Health be followed and further recommends that the superintendent of schools delay the start of interscholastic sports per DPH recommendations for a period following the start of in-person school, and that boys and girls cross country and girls swimming and boys and girls soccer begin this fall after careful mitigation and education practices are in place. And further, the girls volleyball and football be postponed until the spring term. So that's the motion that I made for the adoption of that resolution.
I will second that.
Bob? We have a motion and a second. Should we have discussion?
Yeah.
Is Bob there?
Yes, I said let's have a discussion.
All right, I'm sorry, Bob, I couldn't hear you.
Okay. I would just like, yep, I would just like to say that we're talking about making a motion, but I understand that the powers that be are still meeting again by the end of this week, and there's going to be possibly additional recommendations or changes, and I don't understand why we aren't waiting to see what they come up with. Otherwise, we're presenting a motion based on what we have now, but we don't know what may be coming later.
Well, the motion and the recommendation is to adopt the current Department of Public Health's recommendations. When they have discussion tomorrow with the CAIC, at least we'll have weighed in, letting them know that this board, if others agree and we carry this motion, that we agree with the Department of Public Health's recommendation, that we do not agree with the CAIC's recommendation. That's basically what we're doing. And we're saying this is our recommendation, this is our resolution, that we are endorsing the Department of Public Health's plan.
Bob?
I want to say, I'm just not sure I'm ready to do that without hearing what may be coming down the pike.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Bob, I have a question about what you mean. When you say current recommendations, I assumed you meant the recommendations that are current today, but I believe that's not what you meant.
No, I did in fact mean the current, what I just read are the recommendations that are currently in the letter that was sent on August 13th. And that's what we're endorsing, or I'm endorsing.
So if, under your motion, if DPH changes its recommendations, we are still following the ones that are current today.
This is a resolution that says we're endorsing those. This does not say we're going to fully enact those. We would then be able to have further discussion.
I have to say that I'm entirely in favor of the fact that I think that that we should be governed by DPH recommendations, not CIAC recommendations. Where they differ, I think that public health is the king. That's my feeling. If I understand your recommendation, the intention of your motion to be that we commit ourselves to following DPH recommendations in these matters, then I'm 100% with you. I'm just not sure that I understand that from the wording that you gave to us.
I'm just confused too, because they are meeting tomorrow and we don't know what's going to be discussed or what's going to come out of their meeting. I'm confused as to why we even have to make a motion at all. I missed that part. Like, what is the pros of having us have to make a decision right now tonight, or wait to hear what's happening and then make our decision?
So I look at this as a statement of our current position more than anything else. And this is just our way to formalize a process just to say that we are in support of the DPH position. It doesn't commit us to doing anything in the future. It's merely just a formalized kind of statement that we are in support of DPH's current position. If something changes tomorrow, there's nothing that would prevent us from going next week and, making modifications or enacting something entirely different. This is just a way to, I think, send a message to that meeting process that we are in support of DPH's position during those discussions. That's the way I read it from the way everything is done.
I would read it the same way, Andrew. The resolutions are typically non-binding anyway, but they do, their purpose is to show support for a particular topic or item of discussion. So if something comes down the pike tomorrow that dramatically changes, that there's no problem at all with reestablishing another resolution or maintaining the one that we have. There's no nothing here is cast in stone.
However, I'm concerned that as the motion is worded, it sounds as if we are committed to, for example, not having football, even if DPH tomorrow figures out a way to do it. I understand, I believe, if I could just finish, I believe that we are all committed to the idea that we want to follow whatever guidelines DPH sets out for us. And if that is a commitment or an expectation, the statement that we expect to follow the guidelines set forth by DPH for school athletics is a pretty straightforward one that doesn't commit us in any particular thing until DPH has a chance to meet with CIAC. That's pretty simple. We all have a commitment, we have an expectation, and are committed to following DPH guidelines.
So Victor, if DPH came out tomorrow and said, definitely full contact, whatever sport, starting the first day of classes, you'd be willing to just follow that without further discussion? The reason I used the word current was so that if they change their position, we have the opportunity to rediscuss it.
I think we have that opportunity, especially if we say that we expect to follow the guidelines. If the idea is right now, today, to give some ammunition to DPH when they sit down with the CIAC, then a motion that says that we expect to follow DPH guidelines, I think, is that ammunition. It's straightforward. Now, were they suddenly to fold or change their position, I think we would have to discuss it, but I think it would be difficult not to follow them in that case.
I would just like to say I would certainly put more support with the DPH guidelines, but that doesn't mean that I would completely agree with their final recommendations, which is why I'm not in favor of, I don't think the DPH needs the support to continue. They're going to make the decisions that they feel are in the best interest of health based on the knowledge that they have. But with everything just changing and hearing, yes, we should start the sports. We have seniors that are going to be going to college the following year, and their sports are important, versus those parents, no, let's wait, because especially with football, because it's far more of a concern. I personally, at this point in time, am not ready to make a commitment that I would agree with or follow or take the recommendations. That's just where I am now.
I agree, Lucy. It's still a very fluid situation. How many times has it changed over the last 3 weeks? And for the sake of the student athletes and their parents, what we'd be doing tonight is giving them the idea that we're already making a decision, even though we're not. I think just to avoid the appearance that we're saying, no, we're not doing anything, I'd rather not do that now. I don't think now is the time.
It's a fair point.
Have they, did they stop practicing and conditioning?
They didn't start. They were supposed to start on the 17th, but that was put off until the 24th.
Okay. So potentially that's going to start before we would meet again. So I don't see that we're voting, this is the way I understand it. And so Bobby Armentino, if I'm wrong, then just let me know. But so we're not voting to say we're not going to have football and we're not going to have volleyball. We're saying the DPH is recommending that those things be either postponed or canceled and that we're supporting that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that we would be supporting. So we're supporting the DPH's current position to either delay or cancel those sports, and also to limit other activities, number of games and stuff like that. So the motion, and I can reread the motion one more time so that people get a sense. It says that the RSD13 Board of Education adopt a resolution that supports the current recommendations of the State Department of Public Health be followed, and further recommends that the superintendent of schools delay the start of the interscholastic sports for a period following the start of in-person schools. That's per the recommendations of the Department of Public Health. That's what they're saying that we should be doing. And this resolution, I guess, is they are meeting tomorrow night. There are school districts in the state that have already voted to cancel certain sports and or all sports. So, you know, there is that. With this, with the state, with the CAIC executive board voting to slightly delay football this fall and shorten up the season, and not make any changes to volleyball and those kinds of things, despite the recommendation of the football committee of the CAIC, which voted 9-1. So they have a committee of experts that get together and study all of the data. Those experts told the executive board of CAIC in a vote of 9-1 to delay football till the spring. The executive board, the very next day, I believe it was, issued the statement, no, we're going forward in the fall. And now the Department of Public Health is meeting with them tomorrow night. I think it's important that our board send a message that says, if you agree with me, that our board feels the CAIC should be following the DHC's recommendations. We believe they are the proper recommendations. And that's why I put forward the motion I did. And it's a motion for a resolution. It's not a binding decision on us even, because it is a resolution. It just says we're resolved to endorse the Department of Health's current recommendations. If they change their recommendations, we can endorse those or not. We can choose to do that later. That's what I was looking to do.
Can I just ask, or I don't know, maybe this is just a general comment. The way I look at it as, to me, I don't know, maybe just being in healthcare, I just feel like whatever the current DPH recommendation, to me, like that's Bible, basically, you know, like that's what you follow because it is the least risk that you are going to expose people to. So I think what we kind of keep talking about in circles, and I think we kind of all know this, is that I think in the best interest of our students, we should be following the current DPH guidelines. And I think, as Jamie kind of said, yeah, like, I mean, this stuff changes, by the day. So if tomorrow, a month from now, 6 months from now, there's a new, recommendation from DPH, then we vote and we change it. I mean, it's easy enough. I mean, we can have emergency meetings if we need to, special sessions, whatever. But I think from a liability standpoint, for me as a board member, I think that we should, really vote to follow DPH guidelines as Bob presented, and then change it as we need. Because I have a feeling we're probably going to be having a lot of votes this school year.
And I also think that
I think we should
CIAC,
also understand that this whole decision is not ours to make anyway. It's actually a management decision that would be made by our CEO. And what we're doing is basically supporting that decision with the appropriate data that we collect. So any vote that we take is an endorsement, not necessarily exactly what we would have to do or what is going to happen.
Or a recommendation.
We can also, if there's a significant change to the DPH tomorrow night or Friday morning, we can have another emergency meeting with just one issue. We can do that in a day and not delay any of these decisions.
I think it's important too to, understand that the CIAC, well, I mean, I don't think I have to say this, that they've asked the DPH to come to the table with them tomorrow night. I'm not a part of the inner workings of CIAC and what kind of connection and discussion and dialogue they had with DPH, but I have to believe that a body that oversees athletics for students has to take very seriously, in the time of a pandemic, the health, safety, and well-being of its student athletes. So I do think that it's important for us to hear what is said tomorrow evening, and I am in support of the direction that the board is taking this evening. Obviously I leave it up to you whether you move forward with a vote or not, but this is a discussion that we've been having, and in my mind, it's about the health and safety of our students, and I'm confident that CIAC will likely come to the same conclusion that District 13 is coming to as well.
I think it's important that our constituents understand that we made a decision after this talk and not before, after tomorrow's meeting. I think that anything that looks vaguely like a decision will be interpreted as one, and it will be understood to be premature.
I agree.
Vic, do you suggesting we wait till Friday?
Yes, I do. If we have to swim against the stream, I think we should, and I'm perfectly happy to do that, because I do think that DPH is right, and I don't expect us to do anything that's contrary to DPH's recommendations. But I would feel much more comfortable doing it after tomorrow's meeting has occurred. And if there's no outcome from that at all, then we go ahead. If DPH manages to convince CIAC to be reasonable about this, then we can be in the happy position of following both. If CIAC digs in its heels in the way that it did in relation to its own committee, then we make a choice, and we should make a clear choice, which cannot be misinterpreted by anybody, and it should be after what might be viewed as a fair hearing tomorrow.
I view that if we take a vote on this resolution and endorse it, that we will be sending a message to both the Department of Public Health and the CAIC, which course of action we would prefer to see them take when they come out of that meeting. And I think that's ultimately what the intent of this resolution would be.
I think that intent will not be understood by most of our constituents, who will simply see that we made a decision. You don't think it's the decision, but it's going to look like it to many of our voters. Many of our parents are going to look at this and hear a decision in advance of the process playing itself out. And I understand what you want to do, Bob, but I don't think it works in the context in which we operate.
I think our constituents, if they listen to this discussion, are bright enough to understand what our intention is. And yeah, there will be people that misinterpret it, but people misinterpret things all the time. I think as leaders of the school district, I think we ought to take a stand and say how we feel. If we feel that way, this is how I feel. So
I agree with you, Bob.
My only concern, not having heard the discussion yet that's going to happen tomorrow night, is there's still a lot of questions for me. I think I might be the only parent on this board that has a high school or high school students. So I do have to say that I'm going to speak for the families of high school students and even high school seniors right now, where there's just too many questions still for me to make that decision. There's a lot of kids that are relying on a season for their scholarships or to move on and next year. And I feel that we may be prematurely canceling that for them. And then I'm really uncomfortable with the postponement because we don't know if we're only one of 3 districts who aren't going to have a football season or a volleyball season. Who are they going to play against in the spring? There would be no postponement at this time, unless it was more driven by these other departments. And I think that I fully agree that we should be following the DPH's guidelines. However, I'm really leery because I would want to make sure that we're following the guidelines for everything, including the music department, before we make a broad statement that we're going to completely follow whatever they say for athletics. And one more thing, if we are trying to, if I get the point, I really like the idea of relaying our message to the DPH as far as our support, wanting to follow their guidelines. But if that is our goal, might we just send an email to them prior to the meeting tomorrow to express our support and our dilemma as a school district as well?
I think this resolution is that email. That's what this resolution is all about. It's an endorsement of the Department of Public Health's position on this issue in advance of the meeting.
I think if you listen to the discussion, I think it's already pretty obvious that I'm sure it's pretty unanimous with the board that the DPH guidelines, recommendations are critical to our decision-making in terms of which group we're going to follow. I think that's pretty obvious. And also, if you listen to some of the questions people within our own board are asking, many of us aren't even sure what exactly the intent was of the resolution. I understand what you're doing. I understand what you're saying. Can we accomplish the same thing without making a commitment to a resolution to just say that, of course, we're going to put our weight behind the DPH recommendations when we make our decisions? I mean, that's what would make the most sense anyway. I mean, we ourselves are not 100% sure what it meant. Are we making a decision for sure that we're going to follow this particular recommendation as you read, or are we going to be able to change it later and all? And we're confused, and people can listen to this broadcast, but I agree with Victor that there's going to be a different idea out there as to exactly what we did and what we approved. Tomorrow, is it tomorrow they're meeting or Friday? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow evening.
Tomorrow evening. Couldn't we hold off I mean, we've already spoken out loud and in the public that we're supporting DPH and their recommendations, that they hold the most weight. Couldn't we just hold off another day and see exactly what they come up with, and then we can vote on specifics and get it out there as soon as possible for the public so that they can go ahead and plan. The AD department and the parents and students can plan.
You might consider the possibility that DPH may take more than 12 hours to respond to the meeting. Pretty likely, I think, that if they issue a final decision, it may not be issued on Friday.
I guess my concern with that is that, and they're supposed to start practice on Monday. And, I mean, I tend to be a pretty conservative person. I tend to err on the side of caution, and I'm cautious right now, particularly with, the indoor sport and the full contact football. And I think, again, yes, I think we're talking in circles, but I think like what Bob Yarmartino is asking us to do is to say we support DPH. We're not making a binding vote saying this is the way we're doing it. So I think we should probably move on.
If no one has it, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
The resolution is a little more specific than that, but we could amend it to just say that we support the Department of Public Health resolutions and we'll follow them to the best of our ability. I mean, we could make it a lot simpler than that.
Would you like to make that motion?
But I would like to see if somebody else would be interested in, in making it clear, for everybody's purpose here that also, we can meet and we'll meet next week. I think the conditioning practices are starting on Monday. Is that right, Kath? If CIC doesn't change it.
I thought they've been doing conditioning for a while, and I thought that what's starting is the actual practices. That's the way I understood it.
Kath, do you have the information? Kathy?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The practices on Monday are those are regular practices that are occurring or just the.
So anything that's like a sanctioned conditioning has stopped. So, if I don't know if the boys are doing practices that are outside of the kind of conditioning that's sanctioned by CIAC, but that has been halted. Again, Missy, I don't know, but I can't imagine that there would be a continuation on okay, sorry, I'm just got a text from Todd. Conditioning can be held up and hold on one second. Conditioning can be held up and sports would begin on Thursday. Only football starts on Monday. I think that if there wasn't a definitive decision made tomorrow or Friday, I think that it would be put off again. That's my feeling because that's what happened for what was supposed to start on Monday.
I've read that some districts have already done that. They've already pushed it off another week or two. Is that something that we could do so that we don't have, I know that the kids themselves just want to know, am I going to have a season or am I not? And I'm sure the coaches do too. Instead of having them start the conditioning and then make a decision afterward.
I understand that some districts actually have canceled their fall sports.
So it's their official practice is what starts on the 24th. And I guess I just can't imagine unless there's a definitive decision made. And I think, you know, the point, Maura, that you made about high school students really kind of waiting, you know, these folks are in the kid business. They understand what it feels like to be an athlete, to want to participate. They also know what this uncertainty has been like for kids. Again, I'm going to believe that anyone who you know works for CIAC is trying to keep the best interest of the kids in mind, and that if they're going to make a decision, I think they're going to want to make a decision so kids know exactly what's happening, that either they are playing ball this fall and it's happening, or it isn't, so that the kids can kind of move on. And again, that is just my personal feeling as an educator, as a leader, as somebody who's working with children through a really difficult time. I can't imagine that a governing body would want to put kids through more uncertainty than they've already experienced.
I don't doubt that. I do have full confidence that they are. I'm just more speaking to this board that we could make a decision as far as maybe instead of having our high school kids starting on the 24th, we decide that because we are waiting or following DPH recommendations, that we don't start conditioning on the 24th. So these kids don't start assuming that they have a season if they don't know if they do yet.
Well, I think the DPH is suggesting that they don't do anything until 2 weeks after school starts. And I'm fully in support of that.
So is that something we need to vote on, or is that just something that gets decided by the athletic director?
I feel like that's what I was trying to do. But
Do you want to commit to not having any athletic activities for the first 2 weeks of school? I do believe that the board should publicly commit itself to that.
I'm sorry, Victor, it's kind of hard to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. If we are going to recommend to CAF that all athletic activities be deferred for at least 2 weeks after the beginning of school, I think that deserves a motion and a clear public commitment from the board. You know, it is a concrete decision, and we should make it publicly, not just in discussion.
You have to decide what that is, because the practices have been occurring. And I think what the health department decision was on full practices and things like that, where people are working together.
The operating definition is captain's practices are gatherings which are not sanctioned by the school, but in which teams come together to condition or practice. We're talking about practices that the school organizes and hosts.
I think we're kind of getting away from where Bob Yarmartino started. I don't feel like making any specific decisions about when it should start and where and how. I think Bob Moore had suggested that we modify the motion so that we at least put the support behind the recommendations of the Department of Public Health. And perhaps if you were able to read your resolution without all the whereases, which have all the specifics in terms of which sport and when, maybe that's at least getting to the essence of what you wanted in terms of let's put some support behind the DPH, and that we we highly regard their recommendations and hope to follow them.
May I offer a simplified, a modification along the lines that I think Bob Moore suggested? The board of RSD13 expects to follow as much as is possible the recommendations of the Connecticut Department of Public Health concerning school athletic programs, just as it expects to follow as much as possible DPH recommendations for other aspects of school programs.
I will second that.
So procedurally, I think that either we need to deal with Bob's motion, or Bob accepts this as a friendly amendment.
I think we vote, Norm, you're the parliamentarian. We vote on the amendment and then vote on the original. Is that how it works?
That is exactly how it works.
All right, so if that was a motion by Victor
This.
in a second, is there discussion on that?
So is the amendment to strike all the other language that's in there, or is this okay? I can't support an amendment that strikes all the other language in there and in the vague language that is. I fully endorse Bob's original resolution, but I can't support this.
And I believe the amendment also has the wording, if I heard Victor correctly, that the wording is saying that the board is making a decision, and that's not the case. As I mentioned before, the board can endorse that, but again, this is a management issue, not a governance issue.
I think the original conversation that started several weeks ago specifically had to do with football. And the board members who were discussing this were voicing a concern about a contact sport and the concern that it would put students who are playing football at risk, and could also put other students at risk and the community at risk because of the fact that football is a contact sport. There wasn't a lot of discussion about other sports, delaying the start of other sports. It was specific to football. And so, you know, I am in agreement with the comments that are made about football being risky to our students, and I'm in agreement with DPH's recommendation around football. The procedural decision that's being made by the board, I think this is important dialogue. I think it's important for you to be talking about this, but I really think that the intent of the discussion was about football. And when we were talking about it and the timing of this, I don't think, just because of the way that things are happening, the timing of a decision tomorrow night, I think that I'm hearing the board saying, kind of, we want to go on the record for Cog and Chog, and not everyone feels this way, that we believe that football is, you know, that we should follow the DPH recommendations for football, which I agree with.
Kath, I just want to clarify that my position in the past has been for all contact sports that can't maintain, you know, the recommended distancing while not having masks on. It's not just football, it's for all contact sports that can't follow those guidelines or recommendations, just as a point of clarification.
I too.
And I'm just going to reiterate what I've been saying too, is I can't support something that's just picking out one sport over the other. I mean, my daughter runs cross country and they all start at the same place. So there's still students all near each other. It's really hard to pick one sport. I think it's really unfair to pick one sport that we're just talking about. So I really 100% believe that we should follow DPH guidelines, but I can't support that we're just choosing one sport.
DPH doesn't. DPH covers other sports. There are
Yeah, the DPH covers all of the sports this fall with a set of recommendations that I would like to publicly endorse. But at this point, we have a motion and a second on the floor for the amendment proposed by Victor. So are we going to take a vote on that, or should we move? I'd like to move that motion so we can take a vote.
On Norm.
Yes, let's call the vote because it's been 45 minutes.
Could I please withdraw the motion? On Norm's
Sure.
consideration, I will withdraw this motion. Now, Lucy, you have to agree. And if you don't agree, the motion is still on the floor.
No, that's all right. I'll agree.
So that motion is no longer made.
So now we're back. Now we're back to the main motion.
So can we call that vote then on the main motion so we can
You
move
can-
forward?
You can make that a motion, or if everybody agrees, we can go forward.
I agree.
I agree.
Bob,
let's
may I
vote.
suggest that this vote be taken by roll call?
Sure, and again, the final motion is basically a resolution that we endorse the Department of Public Health for their proposals on athletics for the fall. That's just a summary of it, but Bob, you want to read the motion again?
I'd like to hear it again. Sorry, missing.
The motion is for RSD13 Board of Education adopt the resolution that supports the current recommendations of the State Department of Public Health be followed, and further recommends that the superintendent of schools delay the start of interscholastic sports for a period following the start of in-person school per the department recommendations.
It was longer before. Are you cutting other parts out, those other parts out?
Well, the actual resolution is all the whereases.
Well, that's what I'd like to hear, what we're voting for.
All right, so resolution of the RSD13 Board of Education in the matter of the conduct of high school interscholastic sports for the fall of 2020. In consideration of the impact of COVID-19 on the safety of student athletes and all students, the Board of Education, in consideration of the following. Whereas the State Department of Public Health, in their letter of August 13, 2020, to the Executive Director of CAIC, recommended the delayed start of interscholastic sports until 2 weeks following in-person school opening. And whereas the State Department of Public Health recommended limiting the number of games and the use of locker rooms. And whereas the State Department of Public Health recommended schools consider the conducting of low risk and moderate risk as defined by the National Federation of State High School Associations and Sports Medicine Advisory Committee with proper education and mitigation strategies in place, which include boys and girls cross country and girls swimming and boys and girls soccer. And whereas the State Department of Public Health recommended that the indoor moderate risk of girls volleyball be postponed or canceled. And whereas the State Department of Public Health recommended that the higher risk of football be canceled or postponed. And whereas the football committee of the CAIC voted 9-1 to postpone football until the spring. And therefore, the Regional School District Board of Education supports the current recommendations of the State Department of Public Health be followed, and further recommends that the superintendent of schools delay the start of interscholastic sports per DPH recommendations for a period following the start of in-person school, excuse me, and that boys and girls cross country and girls swimming and boys and girls soccer begin this fall after careful mitigation and education practices are in place. And further, that football and girls volleyball be postponed until the spring term.
Any other, is that everybody got that clear?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have a motion to call the vote.
Second.
All right. All those in, well, we're gonna do it by roll call or by hand.
Is this the vote, Bob, is this the vote on the motion to call the vote, or is this the actual vote?
Motion to call the vote.
Okay. I just lost Bob. I can't hear anybody.
This poor timing.
I couldn't hear anybody.
I couldn't hear anybody either.
I can only, yeah, I now I can hear Bob Moore. I didn't hear him before.
Yeah. My internet keeps wavering here. All right. I think I got everybody that we're going to call the vote. Is that correct?
Yes.
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 All right. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand, and I will read them off. I have Missy Booth. I have Missy Booth in favor. Bob Yarmentino in favor. Andrew Miller in favor. Victor Frederick in favor.
I don't know what we're voting about. I still don't know what we're voting about because your voice is broken up, Bob. Are you calling
We are
Bob?
voting on the motion that Bob Yagamartino just read.
Could I please hear that from Bob
Yes,
Moore?
but that's not clear because there was a somewhat quasi motion to call the vote. And
Yes.
I never really heard that.
No, I didn't either.
And so,
Norm, your vote is, your internet is better. Would you call the vote on the votes? All right.
I'd be glad to. Unless there's objection by anyone on the board, let's just ignore the fact that we tried to call the vote because I don't think that's clear. Is there objection?
Not from me.
Is there objection?
No.
I hear none. Therefore, let's go to the main motion, which is the motion that Bob Yamartino made and read moments ago. And I think we need to do this by roll call. Aye means you're in favor of the vote. Nay means you're opposed to it. Christine?
Aye.
Lucy?
Nay.
Jamie?
Hey,
I'm sorry, say nay. Victor?
Nay.
Bob Moore?
Yay. Or aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Laura?
Can I abstain?
Abstain? Missy?
Aye.
And I will vote aye.
I don't think you asked me.
Yeah,
Oh, the maker of the motion. Bob?
Aye. Aye.
I declare the motion is passed with 6 ayes, 3 nays, 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. If you have a change in the public health department's action tomorrow, I will call another meeting. Can you hear me?
It looks like you're kind of frozen, Bob.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
I said if there's a change in the public health comments, we will consider another meeting tomorrow or as soon as possible. Is that all right?
Yes, and I just want to publicly note that and although Andrew corrected it, that I misrepresented when I was talking about the board's kind of general feeling about football, that it really was all contact sports. So thanks, Andrew, for.
And if it wasn't clear, I would have added all indoor sports. It's all sports.
And in our discussion of sports, I did ask Kath another question, whether or not spring sports like baseball and softball could be added to the fall. And she got a very good answer from Todd, just to let you know.
Which the short answer is no, that we can't move softball and baseball to this fall.
Kathy, I have a question about liability of the school districts. in terms of even just in those children who come into the classroom, if someone contracts the COVID virus, are this, what liability do the schools have? And also, how does that transfer into sports liabilities? Has the state come out with anything with regard to that?
There is some language about liability, and it's actually less than you might imagine. Like if a child, fell off of a swing set. But let me get the exact language to you rather than misspeaking on that. Okay. Norm, is it appropriate, just because I just wasn't able to pull this up earlier when I wanted to talk about this in the reopening, and I will send this to the board. Is it okay if I just let the board know about the numbers that we have for remote as opposed to in-person hybrid?
Absolutely appropriate. We've already discussed that. We're just going back to a previous item on the agenda.
Okay, and I tried to do a cut and paste, but I changed the entire formatting that is in the email from that Kim's, and I want to thank Kim who pulled this all together for me. So at Brewster, we have at this point, and we've really been, reaching out and extending the deadline for parents, and our school secretaries have been making personal contact. So by tomorrow, I'll have the final numbers. But at Brewster, we have 13 students for pre-K who will attend hybrid, 3 who've chosen remote. Kindergarten, 43 in, 12 out. Grade 1, 48 in and 10 out. Grade 2 at Brewster, 48 in and 8 out. At Lyman for kindergarten, we have 27 students in, 1 opting out. Grade 1, 27 in, 4 opting out. Grade 2, 28 in, 5 opting out. Grade 3, 25 in with 4 opting out. And grade 4, 32 in and 5 out. At Memorial, 35 third graders in, 7 out. Grade 4, 38 in and 5 out. And grade 5, 69 students coming in for hybrid and 6 choosing to opt for remote. At Strong, in 7th grade, we have 71 students opting into hybrid and 10 out. In 7th grade, 61 in, 10 out. 8th grade, 91 in and 12 out. And finally, at the high school, for grade 9, so far, we've only heard from 61 of our students, 61 in, and 3 opting out. 10th grade, 71 in for hybrid, 28, which is our highest number so far per grade level of students opting out. At 10th grade, 11th grade, at this point, we only have responses from 67 people with 57 opting for hybrid, 10 out, and grade 12, 86 in and 8 out. And again, I'll put that in a chart and send that out to you. And by next Friday, by next Wednesday when we'll meet, I'll have the breakdowns of number of students in cohorts and who are in our remote groups and our homeschool groups. And that's it, Bob.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the vote to make September 25th a school day, which was formerly Durham Fair Day. We have a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Policy committee, Norm?
Policy committee met tonight. We had several things on the agenda, a couple of things on the agenda really that require some discussion. One of them is I've just lost my paperwork. A new policy regarding child sexual abuse and assault reporting procedure along with that. This is a new policy. We just got this and we need to spend some more time on it. It's rather lengthy and it's rather detailed. And so we're going to take a closer look at that. And policy, as we heard earlier, will be meeting prior to the meeting next week. So we'll have a chance to read and digest the contents of that policy. The mask policy is the gift that keeps on giving. I talked with Tom Mooney at Shipman and Goodwin about Shipman and Goodwin's policy regarding masks. He passed it off to Andy Bellick and Pete Marr. Pete got back to me the other day, yesterday, as a matter of fact. They must be swamped up there because they're usually pretty prompt. Nevertheless, the Shipman and Goodwin does not have a mask policy. And we had some, I'm trying to make this very short because it's getting dark and I'm having trouble seeing out here, but we're going to do some more research on that policy. We're going to set that aside perhaps as early as next week. That was basically what we decided. We had a brief meeting, but we do need to investigate this mask policy further and see how it holds up to the one that CABE sent us. So stay tuned. We'll get back to you on that, and we'll eventually have something in place, as well as a checklist that we got from Shipman and Goodwin that it will outline the policies that we actually need to have. Some of them we've already voted on. We accepted the ones from CABE. You may recall there were, I believe, 13 of them a couple of weeks ago. Those are already in the books, and they're also online already, which I'm delighted to see. So policy committee is not taking a vacation this summer.
Norm, for the mask policy, because the state has come out with such strong language with regards to mask, I guess I'm wondering whether is it necessary because the state was so prescriptive in their stance on masks within school districts, and the second is I think we really got to pay attention so that we don't have language that is that's different from the state's current language with regard to that if we do adopt a mask policy.
Right, we don't have that language from our attorneys, but they're working on it, and they know that we're on we know that we are on their radar as far as coming up with something like that. I'm glad I know people up there, I guess. As far as not being necessary, you are correct. My understanding is even from CABE that it's not absolutely essential that this policy be put into our policy manual. However, it is important that whatever regulations or rules and regulations that we have regarding masks be very carefully conveyed to parents and students so they have a clear understanding of what's expected of the students while they're in school. So that will be forthcoming as well. And we do have some language on that.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we'd also talked about making sure that we are consistent with all those, the state's and the governor's requirements under our mask policy. The next item is community. Nick Fayla wrote about holding on to sports and wait till the decision. I think I've been lost. Am I still there? Hear me?
Just choppy, Bob.
Yeah, you're in and out, Bob.
Yeah, I know. I need one of those Xfinity box things or whatever they are. We have a letter from email from a family of Garrison who wanted us to wait till the decision from the CIAC and Health, from David Johnson to wait to the decision. We had 2 letters, one from Michelle DeMoro asking us to consider delaying everything until the spring. And I think I just got another email from Michelle indicating, why don't we wait till tomorrow? So those are the communications I have. There's a great number of communications about board actions from the other board chairs. Those include the desire to have in-person meetings and a variety of other comments like that. I did talk to Ken about having in-person meetings. There's a great difficulty in the communication aspect of listening to the people talking live versus the people who can then listen online, with not trying to have public into the meetings to keep the schoolrooms and meeting rooms clean. So we'll continue to talk about that. I also want to talk about whether or not to, after September 1st, after school starts, to go back to having monthly meetings instead of weekly. Any comments on that? Any other communications?
No other communication, but your comment about going back to monthly meetings. Don't shoot me now. I've rather enjoyed meeting more often because I think we've really kept up to snuff on exactly what's going on. And I think maybe September, instead of going for a month, because everything is still going to be new and probably still changing, maybe not every week, but maybe a couple of times that month. You know, I mean, it's nice being home. I think it takes a lot of pressure off having to go out and be somewhere else. So it's a little bit easier to have home meetings. So don't shoot me, but that's how I feel.
Anybody else?
Yeah. I would offer brevity and convenience as part of those meetings, because our administrators have to prepare long and hard for these, Lucy, and I would rather them put that effort into the actual operations, not just reporting. You know?
They may not have to come to all the meetings. You know, maybe they can come once and we just meet in between for whatever. Just my thoughts.
We'll get back to the regular meeting and then have special meetings as Kath needs for our actions, okay? And we can have them more often. Any other comments? Communication?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to go to a webinar yesterday with Pullman and Conley. They're another very well-known law firm in the state, and yesterday they had a webinar about returning back to school, and tomorrow is part 2 about returning especially with our special needs children. Might be interesting if you go to their website. I'm sure you can get in. It's not a big deal. You may have already had an invitation through the mail. I don't know if they send them out to everyone, but I get one. It was extremely worthwhile. It was 60 minutes. And Mark Samaruga, who's the head honcho down there, did a fantastic job of keeping on time. And I just had so many takeaways. So if you get to their website, check that out. I think it would be worth your while.
Thank you. We now have time for communications. Ken, for public comment.
Yep, we have one person currently indicating they wish to speak. If any other callers want to do so, please dial *9. I'm going to call on the person with the phone number that ends in 1254. Please state your name and town before your comment. They just dropped off the call. Anybody else? Star 9 to indicate you wish to speak. No one else is flagging their hand.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I think Bob has dropped off the map, so forgive me for taking over.
Meeting adjourned at 7:43. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Night, everybody.
Good night.
All right. How do